everyone, and welcome back to another Q&A here on StephenVlog. You have questions, we have avocados. Today we have 10 avocados from you guys. First avocado being, how do you know Lindsey? This is coming from Moises Zuniga. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I tried.
I want avocados. We don't have any avocados.
I think it was a joke from last month, maybe? We're gonna keep it going.
Anyway,
kill that joke, kick it till it's.
I met Lindsey in third grade when I transferred schools to the school I went to in third grade. And we were in the same class, I think. If not, we were in the same class by like middle school. We were in Girl Scouts together. We were in the same troop, and like her mom was like a big part of it, and she helped sew things. Because we had like a sewing unit and made teddy bears. Oh.
Yeah, Lindsey has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Lindsey has been on the vlog throughout the years, but obviously now that she lives here, she's on it a lot more often, so there's been more questions about like, you know, where did Lindsey come from? What you know, who exactly is Lindsey? Why do you know Lindsey? And that's
I've known Lindsey for a long time. Yeah,
the most straightforward explanation. Mal has known, you have kind of had like a core group of Wisconsin friends. You, Nicole, Steph, and Lindsey.
Yes, that was like the group of 4 of us. And then Haley I knew from college.
Yeah.
But that was kind of it. That was the 4 of us in high school and middle school.
And now I get to know Lindsey. And also she gets to appear in videos a lot more frequently because she lives like right down the road. Next question is from Pitchotcho. Maybe it's Pitchotcho. What's the most time-consuming part of video creation?
Editing.
And Pitchotcho was talking more or less about Stephen Plays.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna let that expand across all the channels.
From my experience, it's editing.
For you, it is painting. Are you insane?
That's the fun part.
Yeah, but that's the most time-consuming part.
Yeah,
there
but
is more time.
Like, cause anguish.
Yeah, well, there's more time that goes in for you.
Yeah.
There's more time that goes into painting.
It doesn't feel like it.
And well, I mean, sometimes it's certainly close. There's a lot of effort that goes into, you know, crafting the videos and ensuring that the videos are really good. But painting wins out.
Yeah.
Now on Stephen Plays, it is editing, and it's just because for however long, well, in most instances, it's editing. In a typical Let's Play, it's editing. And the reason is, if you sit down and you record, let's say you just record straight, like half hour. You don't have any mess ups. There's nothing that has to be redone. It's just boom, you recorded 30 minutes. Then that means in editing it's going to take at least 30 minutes because you have to rewatch the footage while you're going through it. Even if there's no cuts, then it took you a little bit of time extra in editing because you had to bring that footage in and you had to export it. So you're already, no matter what, like, it's going to take longer in editing. The only time it wouldn't is if while you're recording, it's something like there's a lot of additional off-screen work. Like if, for example, there was episodes of Skyrim where I did work for hours and hours and hours, and it was stuff I knew I wasn't going to use, so when I got to post, I could just cut out huge chunks. And that would be an instance where recording took longer. But in most instances, at least for what we do, the editing is going to win out, you know, at least by a little. On StephenVlog, editing obviously takes longer because, like, recording is just my life. It's like, what's happening now? So editing always takes at least twice as long. And it really depends on how complex the scenes are. Our next question is from GlassJoe1337, who asks, how do you decide when to update your equipment? In other words, you know, how do you know when it's time to get something new? How do you know?
You tell me.
I mean, you're not entirely wrong. So over the years, there has been equipment that we wanted to upgrade to, for vlog cameras, I use vlog cameras as an example, a lot of times the limit was just what point-and-shoot cameras could do, because for a long time they could only shoot 1080. And then cameras slowly but surely started inching into 4K, so, you know, how did I know when it was time to update? It's because that technology actually existed, because before then it just didn't exist. You're also looking at things like price points and seeing, you know, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, because you don't want to be an early adopter of a technology and spend ridiculous amounts of money, because generally you wait just a little bit of time and it starts to fall, so you don't want to be the first in line, unless you want to be. I mean, if you want to be that guy, that's fine, but I don't. But as far as like our recording equipment, I would say that a lot of things for us recently have plateaued.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, for years on Stephen Plays, we operated with like $30 or $40 headsets, and we didn't have an audio interface. It was just plugged into the computer, and we did that because it was a big investment. Mm-hmm. It was a huge investment to take the steps necessary to jump up in quality, and we honestly started making those changes largely due to Patreon, because Patreon gave us that extra income to be able to justify those purchases, to be able to say, okay...
the stability. Yeah,
the stability, where we're not worried about YouTube's wee, where we could say, okay, you know what? Let's do it. Let's move forward and get better audio equipment. So a few years ago we did. And when we got that stuff, I'm not saying that we have the best stuff in the world, but for what we use it for, you would be hard-pressed to find something better without spending a lot of money. Because right now, the primary microphones that we use are the AT2020s, which are $100, and they're the stand mics. And then we also use the BPHS ones, which are headsets. They're $200, and they're both nice pieces of equipment. And the thing is, you can spend more money on a mic. You can spend $700 on a mic. But the amount of difference you're going to notice, especially for uploading to YouTube, is so small that it's not worth the money. So it's like one of those things that I really feel like recently, for a lot of the equipment we have plateaued. We have gotten to the point where we have the stuff necessary to produce real quality content. Mal has the camera she needs to produce 4K stuff. We're shooting vlogs in 4K. We're doing a lot of stuff. We've gotten to the point where things are good. The only thing that I know of recently that we really actually need, and it's probably going to be our next major equipment purchase, is lights. You need lights.
Yes, I need lights.
Mal has been operating with the same lights that she started Mal Makes with, and they are broken. They broke in the move. And we didn't even do anything to break them. It's just they weren't
okay.
Nice lights to begin with.
You're taking the bulb out, and the metal piece in the socket with the screws, the treads in it, came with the bulb when we took it out. Yeah, and it can't go back in and work.
There's 2 lights on each head, so Mal's 4 lights total, and one of them is dead. So she's been working for the last few months with 3 lights. And those lights were not super nice when we bought them, but we were operating within a certain budget because we spent a lot of money on the camera.
Yeah.
The camera and the lens are super expensive. So it's not that we cut corners on the lights, it was just our first light set, and we wanted to not spend a ton of money before we knew what we were doing. Now that we are a little more advanced and we know exactly what it is we'd be shopping for, we would do LED panels. Because Mal's stuff is shot with incandescent lights, we would use LED panels like the one that we use for Q&A. So that's the next big equipment purchase. And I don't know when we're going to do that. Maybe as early as like the beginning of next year. So that'll be the next big thing. As far as like any other like huge purchases, I don't know. Things are going pretty good right now. I mean, I feel like we have the stuff necessary to make good things. And if I really felt like there was something else that would add production value, then we would do it. Like we did with the dash cam. It was like I thought the dash cam would be a really cool idea, so we got it, and it was.
Or the green screen?
Or the green screen. I mean, and those are just little things compared to like buying a camera, but, you know, if I feel like something is is really going to add something, then I try not to overthink it. I try to do a little research to learn what I can about it, and I try to go for it and just say, you know, let's do this and let's, you know, update our equipment. Anyway, I hope that answers that question. You know, in the early days, knowing when to update the equipment was more about having the funds to do it. And it's still like that, but we now have the equipment we need. And unless something breaks and we have to replace it, we have hit a point where I'm very satisfied with the visual and audio quality of all our stuff. Anyway, next question is from Ivan Isguerra. Which college classes did you find difficult or unenjoyable?
Stats.
Stats?
Statistics.
Okay, and when did you take statistics?
Sophomore year of college. I had met my math requirement. Because it was a public college, I could take a test and test out of certain classes based on how well I did. If I did well enough, I didn't have to take them. They just said, you met your requirement, cool. Great, good job for you. My English, I tested out of the English 101. I got into accelerated English, which was like easier, faster.
Quick!
It was, okay, English, you had to take English 101 and English 102 first, like freshman year, first quarter or semester, and then the next one, second quarter semester. And I had to do English 150, which was all of it real short together because I did so well with my English placement test. On math, I didn't have to take any math. They said, you've met all your math requirement. And then I decided what I wanted to do with my life, and I needed to transfer schools, and they said, you know, they probably really won't accept your math, even though it was still like in the same UW school system in Wisconsin. Yeah. So they said, you should probably just take a statistics class. That would be really good. Just to have like one math, you know, it'll take care of that. You did really good. You should be fine. Take this professor. She's the easiest one that we have. People really like her. Yeah, well, I took stats, and I had taken some stats in high school. So I knew what to expect, and I knew what it entailed. And I took that stats class in college, and I did horrible on it. Like, and I studied. Like, I was one of those kids that didn't have to study a lot. I just kind of absorbed everything from class. I had to go to class, and I had to study my butt off, and I still did so bad in stats. And then I had to go see my advisor halfway through because they make you do that. And she's like, so how's that stats class going? And I was like, the one you told me to take? She's like, yeah. And I was like, terrible. I'm failing.
But then everything worked out fine.
Well, I transferred schools, like, according to plan. Yeah. And I managed to convince my new college that I didn't need to retake stats and I could take logic instead. Because my stats class had been 2 credits and I needed 4. But I didn't need to take math because I had tested out of it. And so I convinced them to just count my 2 stats class credits as my math credits, and I took a different math class for the 4 credits. And they were like, okay, whatever. So I took logic, and I did really great at logic, and I loved logic.
Yeah, also, kind of a good reminder for people going into college or who are in college, you can get some stuff wiggled around.
Yeah, you can
if you go talk to people. That's a thing. That is totally a thing. So don't
you
ever
have to be nice about it.
Yeah, but don't ever look at like a sheet you get and be like, oh, I got to do this. That's stupid. I did this. Like if you are either coming from high school where you took whatever they're called, super classes. AP, super classes. If you took that, or if you're transferring and you already did something, if something seems weird, go talk to people about it. Because
be nice.
And be nice, but there's a good chance you can be like, yeah, I took that. And they'll be like, oh, okay. And then that'll just be done. Which is great, because then that's one less thing you have to worry about. And you can, like,
take something else.
Yeah, take something you care about.
Oh, the other really terrible class is I had to take an art history elective. Besides, like, the regular 4 art history classes I had to take. Yeah. And I couldn't get into the one everyone I knew was taking because it was full. So I took the history of interiors, which was an art history for interior design majors. Oh my god. I've never been so bored in my entire life.
I'm sorry.
It was bad.
And you can ask me, you can ask Alex, you can ask Dan. If you ask us which college class did we find the most difficult, we'll all say
music theory.
No, I was going to say psychology, but
that too.
But music theory is, God, there's a few. I could answer this with a few. Psychology was the worst. And I think it was the only person in our group of friends, one of the only people in the class who got an A in that class. And it really was just because I figured out what the professor wanted. The professor was this little old lady, and she wanted you to... It's a 10-week class, and every 2 weeks, she wanted you to turn in a 10-page, single-spaced paper that was a review of that chapter. That's a lot of writing. And
I never had to write anywhere near that.
And so that's, you know, in the course of a quarter, in 10 weeks, that's 50 pages single-spaced type. That's a ton of writing. But it turns out what she really wanted, she wanted you to talk about how the chapter applied to your life. What she really wanted was
someone to talk to.
Yes, that was it. And I figured it out early on. So I would just ramble for pages about, like, I would find some small weird thing in the book that, you know, I could tie into a life event, and I would ramble about, like, what happened in my life, and I'd do that forever, and then I'd finally end out that little thing and be like, and that's why I think this paragraph really, you know, is about something I went through. And I'd get these papers back, and she read every word, man, because there was so much writing, and she would circle the stories and underline things. She said, I love this part. And it had nothing to do with the book. It was just like, you know, I was telling her about the time that, you know, me and my cousin were at the store and, like, all this stuff. And she's like, that was great. I really loved it. And all she really wanted, and she said this at the beginning of the class, she said, you know, I'm going to tell you how to get an A. How you get an A is you write me 10 pages per chapter. If you want a B, you write 9 pages. If you want a C, you write 8 pages. Like that she just said that. So it was like quantity over quality, and I learned that what she really wanted is she wanted those stories. And then things were fine. It was still a ton of writing. Yeah. But if I just sit down and I can write creatively like that, and I'm not trying to write in a formal thing,
academic,
then I can just spew it out. So I did, and I did okay. The other one that Mal mentioned was music theory, and that was just a funny class in general because we had me, Taylor, Dan, and Alex all had an elective that we were going to take together, and we were trying to decide what to take. We almost took equestrian studies, which is strangely offered at SCAD because these really rich people gave SCAD tons of money and was like, hey, can we ride horses? And they were like, I guess. Anyway, we almost took that, but we had to drive really far to get to it, and we decided not to do that. So we took music theory. And, you know, we thought it would just be a fun, easy class because we would all be taking it together. We read some things about the professor. It didn't seem like it was going to be that hard. But the problem was when we got in there was all these students there that were there for music. They were like, we're going to do the music thing. Music, music, music. And we were just kind of there. Like, we liked music, and we wanted to learn about the class, but everyone in that class, especially the professor, knew that we were there because this is an elective. And I think she really treated us like that. She was really hard on us. And, man, there's really music theory stuff. Like, hats off to anyone that can hear the difference between those stupid notes. We would have the quizzes where they would play the notes that are basically the same note, and they'd be like, so which note was which? And I'm just sitting there like, they're the same note! Like, I always felt like I was good at that until you get into the high-level stuff.
You can play by ear.
Yeah, like, I can sit down with a guitar or
a keyboard,
and if I can just hear something play in my head and I can play it. But whenever you get into the high-level music theory stuff, I mean, it's not even high level, it's just a college-level class, and they start doing that, I don't know what it is, the notes that are, like, super close, and they keep doing them. Lord have mercy. It was rough. Anyway, I have a lot of other
classes you have problems with.
Yeah, I could talk about unenjoyable college classes for a long time, but I'll spare you guys for now. If you want to know more about it, you can ask it again, and maybe I'll indulge
I have some
in the
with
future.
my major too. Like, oh God.
Well, I mean, I went to art school. Of course, there was plenty of unenjoyable classes. There was a bunch of unenjoyable people. There's like. There's a stereotype in art school for, well, there's different stereotypes for different types of students. And the film students are often seen as kind of like well-grounded, down-to-earth people, whereas like someone like a illustration major might be seen as someone like kind of off the wall. Anyway, all those stereotypes are like totally true for the most part. And it was just super interesting to be in a class that everyone had to take. So you're in like a drawing class, and you sit in there, and after the first quarter, you totally know who everyone is.
Who's the fashion major? Who's the film major?
You walk in, and based on how they dressed, how they speak, how they act, you know every single one of their majors. You're like, that guy's definitely a film student. That is an equestrian studies person, because they don't know why they're here. There's the fashion major, there's the
painting major, there's the...
painting major, there's the graphic design student. Like, you just know all of them.
I mean, I felt that way in education. Like, we'd have, like, a group education on, like, discipline or something, and you knew who was the science education major, who was the early childhood, who were the art education majors.
Yep. Anyway, all right. Like I said, I could talk about this. We could do an entire Q&A that was just college. Maybe we should do that sometime. There's probably enough questions to warrant it. Anyway. We'll move on. Next question is from Bloops64. Could Earthbound ever become your second favorite game ever? So if you don't know, Earthbound is my favorite game ever. Your favorite game ever is Mother 3.
Yeah.
Is Earthbound your second favorite?
I guess.
You guess.
Probably.
This is important. Bloops specifically asked, would it ever become your second favorite game? Or is Earthbound always going to win out because of nostalgia? And I wanted to clarify something, because I think it's important. Earthbound doesn't win because of nostalgia. It's not specifically nostalgia that makes Earthbound my favorite game. There are just way too many life experiences tied to Earthbound. Like, holy crap, so many. If you're new here, you may not be aware that I actually met Mao through an Earthbound website, starman.net. So, you know, I owe my, you know, my wife, knowing my wife, meeting my wife, marrying my wife, to Earthbound. You know, my some of my best friends in the world, Chaz, Alex, who was my college roommate. There's more, but I'll stop there. These are people that I met through Earthbound. I've had a lot of different experiences, trips, like when we went to Japan. I associate that Japan trip with Earthbound. Not because we met the guy who made Earthbound, but because I went with the group of people that I associate with Earthbound.
That you know because of Earthbound.
Because of Earthbound. So, like, when you start adding it up, and to go back even further, my original interest in art all stemmed from this Earthbound website, Starman. My original interest in art, my original interest in design and Photoshop and videos and video editing, all of that stuff really stemmed from there, which stemmed from Earthbound. So, like, it's not nostalgia. It's not nostalgia. It is a collection of incredibly detailed and so many of these life experiences that are tied to this game. So, like, could some other video game beat out Earthbound? Sure. But it has to compete with friends and experiences and love of art and learning and my wife. Like, it would have to like, I don't want to say no. It could, but there's so many things that are tied to the game.
It has a lot to contend with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so, you know, when people say, you know, Earthbound doesn't seem that great, or I liked it, but And it's cool that it's your favorite game, but it wouldn't be my favorite game. I'd be like, well, that's probably because it doesn't have all of these life experiences tied to it for you like it does for me. So it's a completely different experience. And for other people, they also have big life experiences that are tied to games, which is what pushes, you know, those games to become their favorites. So it's a similar situation. It's not that Earthbound could never be, you know, beaten. And I don't think that Earthbound is a perfect game or anything of that nature, but I have way too many, you know, personal feelings attached to it, personal experiences for it to be dethroned anytime soon. I mean, it's just, when I think of Earthbound, I think of Japan. I think of Earthbound, you know, all of these little things. I like the game a lot.
I mean, that's how you know Emil.
Yeah.
That's how you knew him before he was the Chugga Conroy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he went by then, but...
Yeah, it's funny because, like, I mentioned, like, Alex and Chaz. Emil has always kind of existed, I think, as a separate entity. Yeah. And I think it's because he is a YouTuber. And me and him have worked very closely as friends, but in a more like a business mindset for YouTube. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. I know him. I also know Emil because of Earthbound. So, like, all of these experiences are tied to the game. So I'm not going to be able to separate that. It's very much tied to the game. It's why whenever I met, you know, Itoi in Japan, and you got a chance to see him, it's a very emotional experience because, you know, that guy responsible for that game is responsible for a lot of things in my life, a lot of people I know, a lot of my interests, my wife. Like, holy crap. Anyway, next question is from the Poison Ivy Network. Mal, have you ever considered creating paintings larger than 18 by 24?
No. They're pretty big.
They are pretty big.
And, I mean, the bigger I work, the more paint I use, the more I have to worry about it fitting in the frame of the camera. Yeah. Shipping becomes a problem because I use FedEx's medium frame boxes. They don't have a small frame box, they just have medium and large. And I mean, once it gets to be too big for medium, larges are more expensive and they cost more to ship. Yeah. And then at some point, there's no box that will fit a canvas.
Yeah. I mean, from a purely economical standpoint, personally, I feel that if Mal were to paint, you pay 18 by 24. Let's say you painted 24 by 36. That's a big canvas. I do not think that the additional cost for the canvas, for the paint, for the shipping, and then your time is worth money, and it would take more time. That would not translate to higher sales. There's no way that someone would be like, that one's bigger. Perfect. Like, it's not going to make a difference. You could also probably argue that in the other direction. You could probably say that you could be painting smaller format. Yeah. And people would still be buying them as if they were the current size. But 18 by 24 is a really good size. It looks good on a wall. It looks... it sounds stupid, but it looks like a painting size. Like, it just looks like the correct size.
And the reason I went with that versus, like, something like a little smaller or a little bigger is because in college, we always drew on 18 by 24 paper. And when I got to painting, I was like, that's the size I know.
Yeah, well, I think it is a very standard size. Yeah. And I think it's a good size.
It's not a good framing size.
Okay.
That would be like a 16 by 20, I think, is the next standard, but I mean, I paint the edges so it doesn't need to be framed. Yeah. Yeah, and everyone's free to do with their paintings as they please, but I personally think they look much better not framed and just hung up on the wall. That's me. But yeah, would it be really cool if Mal, decided to tackle a massive painting?
And I've seen them in store. We've been in art supply stores. I've seen these massive canvases
that are the size of mattresses. They're huge.
Yeah, they make them that big. But the problem is, your initial cost into the supplies, let alone the shipping, you're already looking at a cost that Mal would be losing money. You know, Mal would be losing money working on these. And we've talked about it in a previous Q&A where we explained the costs that Mal has with her materials and her eBay fees and all these things like that. Like, you know, Mal Makes is already not... This is going to sound wild, but, you know, being an artist isn't a moneymaker. Mal Makes is not like a huge moneymaker. The regular income that Mal gets is basically from Patreon. And it's really great when an individual painting sells really well and brings in, you know, more than the average. It's like, oh, awesome, great. But, you know, on the whole, it's not a big moneymaker, but at the same time, you wouldn't want to lose money. It's like, how much money did we lose this month? Well, not as much as we lost last month. Oh, okay, good. You know, that would not be good. So we wanted to make sure that at least Mal Makes is turning some sort of profit. Even if it's not huge margins, at least it's turning something. So you probably won't see a 72-incher on Mal Makes anytime soon. Next up, we have a question from Spiffleh. Very good question. It says, how long do viewers have to submit memorable moments? So if you're new, Memorable Moments is a series over on StephenPlays where we highlight funny things that happened inside of LP episodes. And the way that you guys submit moments is that when you're watching a video, if something funny happens, you just comment the time code. So you say, you know, at 2:10 to 2:40, Stephen says butts a lot, and it's really funny. So you write that as a comment, and then that moment gets turned into its own separate video at some point in the future, and it comes out in its own time slot, and people watch it and relive the memories of a thing that happened. So that's Memorable Moments. And historically, what's happened is that once a year, I would gather up all of the series that had not had moments made for them yet, and I would get a list of all of the moments, all the comments that you guys submitted, and I would put that on a drive, mail it to Dan, and then at some point in the future, usually a month or two later, Dan would have made all of those videos, those separate Memorable Moments videos, mail them back, and then I would have this huge reserve of videos to release for God knows how long. That's the way it used to work. But then Dan moved here. Now he lives down the street. So we don't have to do it quite like that anymore, because it was seriously like once a year, well, here's all the series, there you go. Now they can be done in a much shorter amount of time, and I think people noticed because recently we just finished doing the campaign for Pikmin 2, and within just a few weeks there was a memorable moment from it. And the reason that could happen is because Dan's here. Dan's already doing work for us, so it's no problem to be like, hey Dan, could you do those memorable moments for Pikmin 2? He'd be like, yeah, okay. So the question is, how long do you have to submit them? Is there a cutoff date? Because people are real curious about that. And there's no explicit cutoff date, but there is actually a cutoff date, because we only do a series at a time. And if your moment isn't in before we, you know,
make the videos,
before those videos get made, we don't return to those old series. And that might be like eye-opening, like, wait, he doesn't? We don't actually return to those old series. And our thinking behind that is that if there's several thousand people watching a video, and we give them a few weeks, and they've commented everything they're going to comment, most likely they've commented all the moments that we're probably going to get out of a series. Now, is that completely true? No, of course not. Because sadly, sometimes people will watch a thing and they'll chuckle to themselves, but they won't write it down. And we don't submit the moments. You guys do. So again, this is super important. If you want a moment to exist, you have to say something. Even if someone else said something, don't worry about it. Say it too, so we know it's really funny. But yeah, is there a cutoff date? There is. And it's not explicitly said, but these days it's within a few weeks, like 3 to 4 weeks from a series finishing. So once the last episode comes out, you probably have about 3 to 4 weeks before we're probably not accepting memorable moments from it anymore. Now, is there some leeway there? Sure. I mean, like, there's some series that have been done for a little while that we still haven't made moments for. But most likely, actually a really good way to know. If a memorable moment has come out from that series, we're probably not accepting moments from it anymore. That's the quick, easy way. Now, you know, could we still do it? Yeah. And we might, if someone, you know, if someone messaged us and said, I've looked through your memorable moments and you don't have this moment from this old series and it's super funny, and we look at it and we're like, oh my god, that is super funny, how'd that slip by? Then yeah, we would still do it, but like 3 to 4 weeks. I could have answered this question in 5 seconds by being like, you have about 3 or 4 weeks, let's move on. But I wanted to explain how it works, because people don't actually know. Actually, just to explain the technical side of it, Chaz developed a script. He made a robot that goes through, after a series is over, you feed it a playlist ID. It goes through the comments of every single video in that playlist. It pulls out every comment that mentions memorable moments, every comment that has any sort of time code, any comment that looks like it could have something to do with memorable moments, and it puts it in this super nice, organized spreadsheet. And Dan gets sent that spreadsheet. So it's like super easy to know what people are talking about. That's also why it's good when you leave a memorable moment to include in your comment like what it's about. Like you can just say, that was funny, 210, 240. But if you're like, that was funny, 210 to 240, Steven's talking about butts, then Dan quickly knows, looking at the comment, like, oh, that's the one where Steven's talking about butts. You know, we did that one. We're good. Anyway, just so there's some explanation there. Next question. ShadowStorm wants to know, any stories about complete strangers that are hilarious or weird? Do you have any?
I can only think of one, and I don't even remember, like, the whole of it.
Okay.
It was sometime in high school. I was driving, because I always drove, and we were parked in front of Target, kind of near Culver's. Mm-hmm. And Stephanie's the one who really saw it. I only caught my eye, like, just out of the corner of my eye. Mm-hmm. The guy in the car next to us kind of just leaned and gave us, like, the look. And, like, that was it. And Stephanie thought it was really funny. And I only saw some of it.
You know what the leaning made me think of? Was a different time where a stranger did something that I would not say was hilarious or weird. I think it was not provocative, like wanting to create anger. Do you remember the time that it was? I think it was actually when we were on our way to go see a meal. We were still in South Carolina, but like there was a group of teenagers, and they were like, they drove up. We were next to them in the stoplight, and they were playing their car, yeah. They were playing their music super loud. The guy we were on the right, and they were on the left, and the guy in the passenger seat rolls down the window and leans all the way out of the car, hawks a big loogie and spits it right onto the top of our car, and then just stares at me with a look of like, what are you gonna do about it? And like, it was a really weird feeling for me, because like everything inside of me wanted to just ram into their car and like beat them to death. But it was also like, this person is actively looking to cause trouble. Yeah. No one does that. Who does that? Who does that? Who pulls up to you next to a stoplight, hangs their entire body out of the window, spits on your car, and stares at you? Who? These guys didn't know me from Adam. Like, so the other flip side of that is like, you know, if these guys clearly are like after trouble, God only knows, you know, if
they have a gun.
If they have a gun or what their plan is here. So I just ignored them, and you know, I took out my frustration on a donut. I went and got a donut. It was great. So that wasn't going to be my story, but that's what that reminded me of. Not hilarious or weird, but scary and angering. I do have a story, though, and I've posted about this on Twitter, and this was years ago. You'll probably remember once I start telling it. We were in the airport to go to, I think we were going to LA to visit Alex and Haley, and it was early in the morning. Everyone's, you know, kind of out of it. Mal and I were there getting ready to get on the plane. This was in Myrtle Beach. An old man walks up to me and says, "Son, how tall were you?" Which I get a lot. And I said, "I'm 6'6". This old man, his eyes got this big. He goes, "Oh." And does the sign of the cross over me. And like, I was so dumbfounded. I was like, what? And then he just turned and walked off. And it was so funny. And my assumption is that the fact that my height had 2 6s, which is 1 6 away from Satan himself, just scared the bejesus out of him, and he just gave me a sign to cross and walked off. It was funny. It was really funny. It was something that even after it happened, I was like, did that happen? Is that something that happened? And recently I was, I don't know how I stumbled across it. I stumbled across that tweet again. And I think I retweeted it even though it was several years old. But I saw it and I was like, oh my god, I forgot about that. That's just such a ridiculous, like, who would do that? In both of my stories, who would do that? Who does that? Anyway, next question is from Michael Pichford. And the gist of the question is, do you feel that your high school experience prepared you for college? But I'm going to read you a little bit, an extended version of Michael's question, because Michael is currently in college to be a teacher, actually considering the Appleton School District, which is where you didn't go to Appleton explicitly, because you...
This is the Fox Valley.
Yeah, in the area, but you grew up in Appleton. And Michael's question was, looking back as an educator, for you, I'm not an educator, so I can't answer in that aspect. How was your high school experience from an academic standpoint? And do you feel like you had good opportunities available to you? Do you feel the staff at your high school did their job and provided you with the materials necessary? So Michael is basically asking, when you look back at your high school experience with the eyes of being a teacher, do you feel they did a good job preparing you for college?
I went to a really good school. Like, my mom researched it when she moved to the area of what school she wanted her kids to go to. And she picked one of the good ones. And, I mean, my school had money. It was assumed everyone was going to go to college. Like, there wasn't really a question of, what are you going to do after high school? It was, everyone pretty much went to college. And it wasn't for everyone, but that's what everyone did. And looking back on it, I feel like, for the most part, most of my teachers were caring and had a lot of worldly experiences. Like, my French teacher worked in the Peace Corps in Cameroon in Africa.
Wow. And,
like, that's where she learned French. And she had a lot of world experiences. And one of my English teachers was part of Amnesty International and had a black belt. And, like, a lot of my teachers were really cool people. And they were pretty chill and cool. Like, I didn't feel like anyone was really strict or mean or...
And you feel like, from an academic standpoint, you got a good education.
Yeah, I think I did. And, I mean, there's opportunities I didn't take. I didn't take AP classes in high school.
Yeah.
I could have. A lot of my friends did, but I was like, I don't want that work.
I think it's interesting to hear you talk about how good your high school was, because we've certainly talked about it on the vlog. The high school that Mal taught here is bad. It's bad. I'm allowed to, like, talk real freely about it now, right? It's bad. It's really, yeah, you're not in the school system. What are they gonna do, fire you? It's really bad. In fact, the schools around here get ratings, and for how long did they have?
They stopped that, actually.
Oh, okay. They just, well, but not when you were there.
For a long time, they got ratings, and I mean, a lot of them in the area weren't rated really great, but I mean, mine in particular was like one of the worst ones.
Yeah.
And I mean, my own high school had so many extracurriculars, and just like so many opportunities for kids. Like, the focus was on sports at my personal alumni school.
Yeah.
And like, sports got all the money, but like, there was so many other opportunities otherwise that you could be part of. And my school was good. But I mean, where I taught, like, there weren't as many extracurriculars, and the ones that were there, the kids didn't really participate. Like, the focus was on sports, but I mean, that was the way out of it for kids.
Yeah.
Like, that was how you got out of the town, is sports scholarships.
Yeah, I just find it interesting, and you must feel this way, where you identify that you went to a good high school when you teach in a high school that is so different. Do you feel like you earned a newfound respect for your high school experience by teaching in a high school that is like polar opposite?
Yeah, and I mean, it also helped me understand where other people in the world come from. Like,
yeah,
not everyone had a high school like I did.
Yeah.
And in the area, in the Fox Valley area, a lot of the schools are really good. Not all of them, of course, but I mean, most of them are really good, and they're all pretty comparable. So a lot of people in the area I grew up in all kind of come from a similar background.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I mean, I did some, not student teaching, but like before that, like the practicum stuff.
Yeah. Where
you'd go to a school and observe. I did some of that nearby the Twin Cities. There was a big Somalian population north of where I went to college. And I went and did a few days there just to kind of observe and see how they were dealing with these students that couldn't speak English and had these other requirements that their regular population that wasn't from Somalia, like trying to deal with the backgrounds of all their kids. And then I did some of the practicum in Savannah.
Yeah.
So that was really different. And then starting to teach down here just was interesting.
That's a word for it. South Carolina, this is going to blow everyone's minds, I'm sure. Well, it actually might blow people's minds in like the UK or Australia if they don't know much about the US, but South Carolina is not known for education. We're not high up there. Now, Wisconsin actually is. When it comes to the United States is great at ranking the states for various things because a state wants to be known for something good, like peach production or number of golf balls.
We beat Georgia.
Yeah, we actually do. Take that, Georgia. You think you're the peach state? You technically are the peach state, but South Carolina makes more of them. But yeah, it's no surprise that from an outside standpoint, people look at South Carolina or the South in general and think that if you went to school there, you're stupid. And it's because that's reflected in these, state versus state charts. The South and South Carolina do very, very poorly. And that's one of the reasons that, when my mom had me, to back up, when my parents moved here and they knew that they wanted to have a kid, that they were going to have to come up with a different option because my mom really didn't want to put me in the public school system because she knew that it was not great. And my parents put me, I've talked about it before, but my parents put me into a private school. And I spent my education, my
K-12?
Yeah, K-12 education in a private school here. And that was a huge, huge, huge financial sacrifice on the part of my parents. And that's something that they know and I know, and like I can't put exactly into words the sort of financial sacrifices they made to make that happen, but they did, and I sincerely appreciate it because the education around here is not great, and I think Mao has definitely had a chance to see that firsthand when she comes from a place like Wisconsin, where the education is known to be a lot better, and she can see that firsthand in her high school experience versus the teaching that she did here. If I would have went to that high school, could things have turned out differently? Sure. Sure. The education that, a student goes through is a big part of their becoming a adult. It plays a major factor. And it's not, the be-all, end-all of who you become, but it's a big part of it. And I don't know, that could open up an entire other discussion about how the education in the United States is questionable.
Did we actually answer the question of if it prepared you?
You did.
Did I?
You did. You said that you felt like you were prepared.
For the most part, I was prepared. I didn't have the greatest work ethic, and that kind of transferred into college after my freshman semester. Why? Because I never had to study for anything in high school.
So you just felt like everything was too easy?
Yeah. And then I got to college and I really didn't have to study for anything, still, kind of. But, like...
Then what? Then why does it matter? Then you did fine.
But like, just the motivation sometimes, like, oh, I can do this later. Like, I wish I was a little bit more motivated.
You don't say. There's been occasions where it's no secret that I'm a workaholic, and I'll kill myself. I'll just completely grind myself into the ground working. And I don't have a problem doing that. It's just, in my head, it's like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. And it's, sometimes Mal and I have been at odds in the past because we have, I don't want to say different work ethics, but we do. We really do. And it's not that you're a slacker by any stretch of the imagination, but I am so polar opposite where a lot of times I'll get frustrated if Mal is not actively doing something. Mal believes in breaks, and I'm like, what's a break? Why are we taking a break? We should be working. It's just interesting to hear you say that. It's not like a big reveal, like, oh, it's just that you were talking about work ethic. I was in a fairly similar situation in high school where it pretty much most things came naturally to me. I did study. I never got math. Never got math. Once I got to high level math and I decided I couldn't learn it, then I was done with it, and that was that. And it was like I had a tutor, and I went to a tutor a few times, and I was like, I'm not interested in this. So, and it was fine. So I don't want to tell kids out there, be like, if you can't get math, don't worry about it, because you don't need it. But
oh, I had a good example. But
like, it was true. Like I didn't really. Once I realized I couldn't do it, I didn't try. I was like, I'm done with that. But the question that I wanted to answer is, do you feel that high school prepared you for college? Yes. Yes. But again, I went to a private school. We, different
specialized attention.
We had specialized attention. We had specialized teachers. And like, was every experience perfect? God, no. There was quite a few things where I was like, what? No, what? Like, I remember the biology? Something? I don't know, physical science? There's some teacher that, like, for months, we didn't do anything at all. Like, not even a little bit. Like, we told jokes. And, like, that was bad. But there was a few other aspects where it was like, we had really good teachers. Like, I had several throughout my high school career, really good English teachers. Like, really, really good. If Alex was here, he'd walk in and say, sex into children's eyes, which is a bad example. But I did. I had really good English teachers, a big focus on creative writing, which I think was something I really wanted to explore and was able to in high school. I learned how to spell. It's like one of my strongest abilities is being able to spell words. Yeah, and then history. I had probably the best. I had a better history teacher than you did. Yeah. Well, I'm talking to them. I did. I really did. I had a he's been on, the major news networks touting his books. I don't know how many books he's written. They're basically all about the Civil War. I learned a lot about history. He's a great guy, but I learned basically everything was about the Civil War. I know a lot about the Civil War. Maybe a little less about the other stuff, but anyway, so are we done with this question? Did you want to say something else? I feel bad because
we talked a lot about other things.
We kind of got off on a tangent a little bit. This is a long Q&A, but I feel like generally the people that are going to tune into a Q&A, they know what they're getting into. It shows you how long the video is before you click it. It's not like someone gets into the video and they go, "Whoa, I thought this was 3 minutes. I'm out." You know what you're getting into, right? Of course you do. All right, that's good enough. we were prepared. Next question, Saya Forful. This is the last question, actually. Saya Forful asked about dream journals. In a recent vlog, I talked about keeping a dream journal, and they asked, could you tell us about the experience? Have you felt an improvement in recalling dreams when you wake up? Is it hard to stay committed to it? And are there any particular interesting dreams you'd like to share? and I just wrote it as, can you discuss your experiences keeping a dream journal? So in that vlog, I had been keeping a dream journal, and I kept it for several months. I did stop. And the reason I stopped is, I think, honestly, life just got really stressful or something. I don't know exactly. I did a really good job keeping it, but at some point I did stop. If you're not familiar with the concept of a dream journal, it is exactly what it sounds like. You write down your dreams. A lot of people, I would say most people, can't remember their dreams. You wake up and you have a very brief moment where you can remember, or you can recall what happened in your dream. And if you don't write it down, it's gone. And the advantage of the dream journal is that you do start to better gather the ability to recall dreams. You almost train your brain to hold on to that information. And it's really interesting because after you've done it for a few months, when you wake up, the dream is there. You know, a lot of times it's like fleeting. You wake up and you're like, oh my God. And I would keep a notebook and a pen next to my bed. I'd wake up and I'd really try and quickly like write down what it was. But after a few months, you do actually just start to like keep it fresh. The biggest downside to doing the dream journal was, I hate to say it's you, but it's you. I really feel like it would be a lot better if when I woke up from a dream, I could tell Siri or something. I could do the voice to text. If I could just hit it and then ramble, that would be easier than trying to write, because I would have to write pages, you know, of stuff that was in my head, and I'd have to do it, and in the morning you're like tired and you can't see straight. It'd be a lot easier just to hit a button and be like, Siri, let me tell you about this dream. But I can't do that because a lot of times I wake up like, you know, it might be an hour or two before the alarm goes off, and I don't want to wake her up, you know, like I don't want to be like, oh, Siri, let me tell you, and then you'd be kicking me like, what are you doing? So if you live on your own, if it's just you, I think you're in a much better position to do this sort of thing. But it's super interesting. And I'm someone who never remembers dreams, ever. You know, maybe when I first wake up, I'd be like, I think I had a dream, but like that was it. And I actually found that I was remembering quite a few. And because you asked, you said, is there particular interesting dreams you'd like to share? I'm actually going to go grab the journal itself and read you some. So this is the journal that I've been using, and this is actually, I believe this was a gift from Calvin and Bick.
From mail?
From a mail episode. And I kept the journal itself for, I dated them. It looks like I kept it for about 4 months. June, July, August, and September. And I would, to be honest, it's super fascinating. And I'd really like to do it again. And I think the reason I stopped is because life just got stressful and busy, and the idea of waking up and like having to do it when I had so many things on my mind was just too much. But as things calm down around here, I'd really like to do it again because I enjoyed it so much. So here's a really great one. This is from June 6th. And it says, held a Pokemon tournament on TVs in a hospital room with a bunch of people I didn't know. But Mal, my dad, Steph, and Steve were all there and in the tournament. Before the tournament took place, Mega64 helped advertise it on the streets by holding up large signs and by going into game stores and screaming. Lots of people were fully nude, but no one seemed to care. Here's another one, and sometimes I would write notes inside these entries because I recognized why I dreamt what I dreamt. So I start this and I wrote, the night before, I watched a video about Oslo, Norway, so that was the setting of this dream. I can't recall if I was military or a rival gang/faction, but we had to meet in front of a building where a ton of men in suits holding guns were. Our group was nearly as many, about 7, and one of us had a briefcase they wanted. I remember thinking they would blow up the building if they didn't get this briefcase. I also remember wanting to be the guy who holds/deliver the briefcase, but not being allowed to. In the dream, I was still me, and I had no knowledge of gangs, etc. I kept trying to make everyone on both sides laugh to reduce the tension. I woke up as we were handing over the package. I was in Japan with a group, maybe Fangamer, and we went into a big shopping warehouse, and they had bins of knockoff consoles that had super small form factors. I was interested in the Famicom model, and one guy who was with us who I'm pretty sure was Metal Jesus Rocks from YouTube, even though I've only seen a few of his videos, suggested I get it. The model I looked at was only 470 yen, and he said to get the nicer model for about 1700 yen. I picked it up and kept shopping. There was a CD-based game, maybe for Sega CD, but it wasn't in the original packaging, called Flower, that featured art of Reba McEntire or something, and I grabbed that as well. Metal Jesus also showed me a weird PS Vita box, again knockoff, that had a screen and buttons on the box so you could play the one game advertised. The packaging was huge and very thin. At some point I found Mao in the store to show her, and we decided not to get the Famicom because I had an NES already, even though the NES and Famicom are different systems. And I already owned Flower in the original packaging, so I didn't buy anything. I also remember seeing people from Fangamer, which is why I think we were with the group. I dreamt I had to stop for gas in a small town, and as I approached the gas station, I saw there were no pumps outside, and I had to drive through a barn to get to the pumps in the back. As I approached and parked my car, a hillbilly with thick Coke bottle glasses ran out of his house, and it looked like he was stealing a purse. But there was a huge sense of deja vu, like, oh, they do this every time I'm here to promote this gas station. Also, I don't know why I said promote, but I wrote promote. Maybe I didn't mean promote. When I went to fill up, I had trouble because there was in and out for the gas. And I got the in figured out. In was like normal gas pump. But I couldn't figure out how to attach the pump to my car to suck out the bad stuff. I woke up perplexed. I was with a ton of people in a hotel slash casino slash department store slash spa thing. Place was absolutely gigantic. At one point I had to pee and spent a long time trying to locate a bathroom. At some point I realized I was being followed by a group of guys. Someone attacked me from behind, but I saw their shadow and flipped them. Soon I was stopping all of them and dropping mad rhymes while doing so. All related to how I was faster, stronger, and had to pee. I knocked the final guy down as I spit a rhyme, and he said, "Aw man, his rhymes are dope." I helped him up and woke up shortly after. So, like...
Did you ever have to pee, though?
I don't know, like, maybe I woke up and then peed, but, like, apparently in that dream, I was, like, Jackie Chan, but also a member of the Beastie Boys, and everyone really respected my mad rhymes. Also, notice I helped him up. Like after he recognized, I was like, okay, I'll help you up. Oh, that was my last entry. Anyway, so yeah, that's just some of the really ridiculous things that go through my head. Yeah, I want to keep doing this. I've mostly forgotten about it. Now that I've been reminded about it, I'll try and do it. It's hard to get started on it. But once you get started and you get in the swing of things, it becomes really easy. I think the worst part is my handwriting looks like chicken scratch. And it's just because you're trying to write as fast as you can to get everything in your brain onto paper before it goes away. But, yeah, it's worth doing, at least for me, it's worth doing just because it's really funny. Like, why? I don't know why. And I flipped to the guy, like, flipped him over, and then I was like, I really gotta pee, I'm gonna punch you in the face. Anyway, that is it for the Q&A. If you have a question that you would like to ask us, you can do it by leaving a comment down below, and we will get to them at the end of the October vlogs. That's when we'll do the next Q&A. That's how it works. If you're new here, so we have to just assume maybe
by the end of this video, they're no longer new. Yeah,
if this is one of the first videos you've watched from us, and you made it all the way through this video, you're no longer new. You get to wipe that slate clean. You're no longer new. You've been here for an hour or so. You're not new anymore. You're a regular. Welcome. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next month for another Q&A.